Hey, good morning, Metropolis. It's now 5 after the hour of 6 a.m. in the big monster city.
Come on! Let's get pumped!
Not drinking any fucking Merlot! What can I say? The camera loves me.
Shall we begin? After you, Junior.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Multiplex Logged It. I'm your host, Kaleb Boatman, and today we got a fun show for you. We're talking comic book movie performances. Best performances from comic book movies. Should be fun. And we got a good panel to do so. Jack, we get you on the show a lot, but it's because you're always available. I'm kidding. We love having you.
Correct.
So, how are you doing, Jack?
I'm doing quite well. It was a long day, a lot of work outside, but other than that, it's been pretty good. Happy to be here.
That is good. And somebody who I don't think has been on the show this year, correct me if I'm wrong, but he's been on the show before. Jake, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. Yeah, I was actually on last week.
I wasn't there last week. That's why.
Yeah. That's all good.
I had to take. I was very busy that day, so I
That's all good.
did not pay. My bad.
Yeah, no, that's all good. Yeah. No, I've been doing good. Yeah. No, I sort of messaged him at the last moment. I was like, I kind of want to do this. I think it'll be an interesting have me on for this one. But no, I'm looking forward to what we get to discuss today.
Very good. And somebody who I'm excited to have on the show, Jacob Cameron. I think we've had a few of his matches come out. Excited to watch him play, but excited to just learn about some of your opinions, Jacob. So how are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to be on. I've had the time of my life, being a part of FANDOM and movie Melee. It's just been every time I get the DM saying, "All right, your match is this." I'm like, "All right, it's time." And so I just get so excited. And then I realized you all got logged in and your list sucks, which I'm going to be on a future one of those. And I'm like, I got to find a way to get onto these shows. And I found my way onto one of them, and the other one's coming up. So yeah, I'm excited to be here.
Very awesome. Well, thank you, Jacob. And we'll just get started into the first part of the show. Your favorite movie you logged this week. Jack, we'll kick it off with you. What was your favorite movie you logged this week?
Well, I'm not gonna words. I watched quite a few movies that I really liked this week. The Exorcist is one, but had I not watched The Lion in Winter, I'd be talking about that. Instead, I'm talking Lion in Winter. Katharine Hepburn is fantastic. This movie is so much fun. I love movies where everyone's double crossing everyone. It's just one of the most fun things for me to watch. Katharine Hepburn is great. Anthony Hopkins, young Anthony Hopkins in this movie, he's super awesome. Really strong performance from him. Peter O'Toole is so great in this. He's over the top in all the best ways. He's got some great lines, and this movie, I didn't expect this going in. Really surprisingly funny. There's a moment where I can't think of the actor's name. He plays the youngest son, who Anthony Hopkins pulls a knife out on him, and he goes, "He's got a knife." And Katharine Hepburn's response is, "Of course he has a knife. He always has a knife. We all have knives. It's 1183 and we're barbarians." And it's some great lines in this movie. Had a lot of fun. Hepburn absolutely deserves her Oscar for it. And I really don't get how anyone could have tied her, let alone Fanny Bryce. But, whatever. Great movie.
Yeah, this is my favorite Katharine Hepburn movie and performance of the ones I've seen. I think she is phenomenal in this, and I think she's just great when she has someone to play off of, whether it be comedy or drama-wise, who knows how to push her buttons. And Peter O'Toole is just hitting that exact line, and they know how to push each other's buttons just in the exact right way. And yeah, these types of kind of big, costume stage pieces don't always work for me. But when you get it like this, where it's just people backstabbing and double crossing each other, It's great, really good. And yeah, you got a young Anthony Hopkins and a young Timothy Dalton in here, both killing it. Jake, have you seen The Little Lion in Winter?
I have not, embarrassingly so.
That's fair. I think you'd like it, actually. Jacob, have you seen this?
I have not either. I'm sort of glad I'm not the only one, to be honest. But it's been one that I grew up watching a lot of TCM with my dad, and so I'm surprised that this one was not one that we watched together. But I will remedy that very soon.
That is fair enough. Well, I think we're going to get over to me. And my pick for favorite movie like this week, I think I am going to go with. You know what? Yeah, I'm going to go, since I wasn't here last week, I'm going to go back a week, and I'm going to talk about a movie that just absolutely, floored me with how awesome it was. I think a lot of people know that I've been on a little bit of a Jackie Chan kick lately, and this is one of my favorites of the ones I've watched. Police Story 3 Super Cop absolutely ruled. This is the one that introduces Michelle Yeoh into the franchise, and she is so good. Because the thing that in pretty much every Jackie Chan movie that Jackie Chan almost never has is someone who can actually match him. You know, there are people who can beat him at the beginning or have the upper hand on him, but somebody who can actually play off of him. And really, they're not usually buddy movies. It's usually just Jackie Chan, versus the world. Whereas this one, it's kind of like a buddy cop dynamic between the two of them. And it is so fun because you essentially get the same tension within the movie between the two of them that you got in real life, where they're essentially just both trying to one-up each other the whole time. And you can tell that with the stunts, where they are both just trying to one-up each other with the stunts. And this movie has one of the coolest stunts of all time when Michelle Yeoh rides a motorcycle onto a moving train, and she actually freaking did that. And it rules. And yeah, this one rocks. Jack, gonna assume you have not seen this one.
Not yet.
That is fair. Jacob, have you seen this one?
I have, yes.
I said Jacob. You're good.
You go, Jacob.
Middle school all over again. There were two Jacobs, and whenever the teacher would be like, Jacob, yes, and we would both raise our hands. But no, have not seen this. My favorite Jackie Chan movie, I'm partial to the Rush Hour movies. I love all three of those.
Fair enough.
My favorite Jackie Chan, one of those, is a movie called Who Am I?, which I don't know if you've ever seen. It has an incredible fight on a rooftop. That particular scene is on YouTube. Go check it out. Your mind will be blown.
Awesome. All right, Jake, thoughts? I know you've seen this one.
Yes, I'm also sort of weirdly doing a Jackie Chan marathon, sort of in and out over the year. Yeah, I thought this one was really good. I mean, I liked the dynamic between Chan and Yeoh. It's great. She's an incredible inclusion, and she gets her own sort of spin-off film, I think, after this one. Yeah, I mean, I really liked it. It's just, it takes its time to get to the action scenes, especially during the end. It is glorious when it does happen. Good stuff. Yeah, no, I like it.
Heck yeah. Well, Jacob, we'll go over to you. What was your favorite movie you logged this week?
So I'm going very recent on this one, literally this past weekend. I saw, because it's a bit of a funny story, I wanted to go see Sisu, but unfortunately it's not playing in my area. I'd have to go to Orlando to see it, and unless I have a good reason, I'm not doing that. So my next best option was Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. I had no knowledge of the book or anything going into it, and I thought it was absolutely delightful. This was directed by Kelly Fremont Craig, who directed The Edge of 17, which is an awesome coming-of-age movie you all should see if you have not. It stars Abby Fortson. I forget her middle name all the time, but she was the youngest version of Scott Lang's daughter in Ant-Man and Ant-Man and the Wasp, the first one, the No Quantumania. And Rachel McAdams plays her mom. And it's just a really nice story. It deals with very complex things about, coming of age but it's done in such a very mature way, and it's just something that I almost feel like doesn't really happen all that much anymore, unless I'm missing some obscure examples. But I think that this is definitely a sleeper hit of the year, at least for me.
That is fair. I have not seen this one yet, but I've gotten a lot of people specifically tell me I will love it, so I very much want to see it. Jack, have you seen this one?
Not yet, no.
That is fair. Jake, have you seen it?
It's not coming out yet, but maybe we'll see.
That is fair. I always forget that you guys get stuff later than us, almost always.
Yeah, that throws me off a little bit whenever I hear about it. I'm like, that came out months ago, and then I'm like, oh yeah, different part of the world.
Fair enough. Well, now, Jake, over to you. What was your favorite movie you loved this week?
So I'm between two, and they both came out in 2003, and I'm trying to figure out which one do I really want to. One do I want to talk about, or what's the one that I had the best experience watching? Oh, it's tough. I mean, I'm gonna go with the funnier answer. Oh, it's pretty good though. I remember watching this movie back in 2003, and I remember having such a good time. It was the first movie I saw in the 3D format, and it absolutely was incredible. It was sort of a gimmick at the time, but Robert Rodriguez really did popularize 3D back again. I'm talking about Spy Kids 3D. Game over.
Game over.
Absolutely masterful film by Robert Rodriguez. I was just on TV. I was at dinner with my parents' place, and it was just on TV, and we were like, let's watch it. And it was just a fun fucking ass time. I've always loved the movie. It's the best of the trilogy, and I say trilogy marks. But it is just really fun. Like, I've always loved the idea of going into a video game, and that was sort of like how this movie started. It was like we also need to use this 3D format, and Rodriguez was like, okay, well, turn Spy Kids into this and make it about video games. It's so conceptually different from the other ones, which is sort of interesting to think about. But there's just really fun stuff. They think he's the guy. We have the bit with the guy at the end with Elijah Wood, which is hilarious. One of my favorite things ever. There's just some really good stuff. I really like the race halfway through the movie. I think that's really fun. It's just good shit. I mean, it's that meme quality content that we are so used to at this point, but like this is from 2003, and like a whole new generation has passed, and it's sort of like just one of those things where people from this generation, from this 2000s generation, just has grown up with, and it's just become a part of pop culture. It's one of those really fascinating sort of films. And then it does an Avengers Endgame-esque ending where all the characters get together to fight the villains. It's one of those things I absolutely love, and it's fun. It's great.
Did somebody ring the dingster? Come on.
Game over, man. Game over.
So much fun. So much fun. This I don't know if I would actually call this the best of the franchise, but it's the most of the franchise, which inherently then makes it the best. And this one is just so much fun. Ricardo Montalban actually getting to do more stuff than he does in the second one. The second one's probably just overall my favorite because Steve Buscemi being an absolute maniac in that movie. But yeah, no, this is super duper fun, like nostalgic cheese. Jack, have you seen Spy Kids 3D?
I've seen all of the Spy Kids movies, and this one's a good time. I haven't seen it in years, but I remember really loving this movie. Not as much as I loved Shark Boy and Lava Girl when I was younger, but it's still solid.
Jacob, have you seen this one?
Saw it in theaters. It has been a good long while, but I do remember liking it. It is due for a rewatch, but I'm not sure if it's gonna hold up as well, unfortunately.
Fair enough. Well, that does conclude that portion of the show. Now to go over to your least favorite movie you logged this week. Jack, we're going back over to you.
I'm gonna go a little further back because I did talk about the Asphalt Jungle on a different show recently. So I'm gonna go a little further back, and I'm gonna talk about Cabaret because I saw this movie not really knowing what to expect, but I had high hopes because I love All That Jazz. That's one of my favorite movies I saw for the first time last year. This was a bit of a letdown. It felt a little messy, unfocused. I'm not entirely sure why the hell Joel Grey walked away with Best Supporting Actor. I thought his performance was fine at best. Overall distracted from the overall narrative of the film. Wasn't a huge fan of it. Liza Minnelli's good. I'll give her that. A very good performance. Don't know if I would call her Oscar worthy, but I haven't seen the other nominees. So overall, just a little disappointed by this one.
That's fair. I think I probably like it a little bit more than you, but even then, I don't quite understand like a lot of the love for this movie, and I have never really understood the love for Joel Grey's performance. I think he's fine. I think Minnelli is the reason this movie works as much as it does, is because she just sells it. And there's some good, like, the things that Fosse always gets right. Fosse gets right. The production design, the costumes, the editing. Like, that's just his bag, and he's great at it. But yeah, no, this does not have the punch that Lenny or All That Jazz pack. I think particularly because this is much more contained than the both of those. And I think Lenny and All That Jazz really kind of play with time and, you know, narrative and do a lot of really interesting things that this one doesn't. Jacob, have you seen this one?
I have. On my YouTube channel in 2020, I did what I called the AFI project, where I reviewed all 100 movies on the AFI's top 100 list. It was so much fun. And Cabaret was like in the, like, I can't remember where it's placed on there, but it's in the mid-pack of that list. And I would put this movie into the column of I respect it more than I like it, because the movie looks outstanding. The music is, of course, great. Bob Fosse, I mean, come on. The music's awesome. Liza Minnelli was fantastic. I just had a problem with some of the tone. Like, the tone changes just subtly. Like, you have this loud music, and then you have the war stuff. And they go together like chalk and cheese. And I get it. It's all trying to be narratively cohesive. I just think it doesn't work.
That is valid. Jake?
Yes, I've seen this. I watched this last year, along with all the Bob Fosse's movies. And it is definitely the most interesting as far as how it sort of plays out in his career. Obviously, he did Sweet Charity before this, and then immediately wins the fucking Oscar and has like a massive amount of success for the rest of his career. But yeah, I do agree that this is like not as experimental or as stylistically speaking as far compared to Lenny and All That Jazz. I mean, I think All That Jazz is his best movie. I think a lot of people agree with that sentiment. But Cabaret I really like. I mean, I'm not a big musical person, but this is definitely one of the ones that I got a lot of it more out of just because of the production side. I mean, I think visually looks incredible. I think Liza Minnelli is outstanding. I'm like what Jake was saying. I mean, I think it's a deserving win, but I mean, I can't say too much just because I haven't seen the other nominees. It would be interesting to see how that sort of plays out with that in mind. But I like the relationship she has with Michael York. One of my favorite trivia moments ever was Michael and I pulling his name in a concept title match. And it's just really good, and also just sort of the hidden undertone themes, the relationship between the three characters as we see throughout the film. It's good stuff, and it's about Nazism and how it rises, and it's horrible and it's terrible. But yeah.
Fair enough. Well, now we go over to me for my least favorite movie of the week. I'm going to keep the tradition going over the last few weeks. It's time for another Best Supporting Actress winner, everybody. And this week, what did I watch? I watched a few of them, and some of them were actually pretty good winners. I watched The Great Lie, where Mary Astor won, and she's great. But I also watched None But the Lonely Heart, which is a Cary Grant movie. Ethel Barrymore one. She's fine. She's not the problem here. I hate to say it, but the problem here is Cary Grant. And he's not. I don't even think I can say he's doing a bad job, but he is just so utterly wrong for this role. It's kind of embarrassing. Because essentially this character is supposed to be like a poor blue-collar Joe Schmo And that is just not Cary Grant's vibe at all. So it's completely like just does not fit anything. He sticks out like a sore thumb in the movie. He was nominated for this. This is one of his only 2 nominations. And it's weird. They must have just not really respected his comedy stuff. But I think his like romantic comedy leading man stuff is like some of the best work of that genre. Like he is so good. He can do like and just straight comedy, like that stuff's great. But in this, and he can do some dramatic stuff. It's just in this, he's just so miscast. Has anyone seen this one? I'm gonna assume nobody has.
No.
I haven't seen it, no.
Fair enough. Well, we will move on. Jacob, over to you for your least favorite movie you'll love this week.
All right, so again, for my YouTube channel currently, I am rewatching and reviewing, or watching for the first time in certain cases, but reviewing all of Wes Anderson's movies because I've only seen a handful of them. Like Fantastic Mr. Fox, I've seen. Isle of Dogs, I've seen. Moonrise Kingdom, I've seen. Grand Budapest Hotel, I've seen, but none of his early work. So it's been a bit of an adventure. And I don't know how hot of a take this is going to be, but here it goes. I did not like the Royal Tenenbaums. I thought the movie was mean-spirited in all the wrong ways.
Jacob, just leave the chat before Boatman kills you.
Gene Hackman won a Golden Globe for this. I ask you why. Because his character is so terrible. Like, and I get it. Like, he is, I guess this is the point. But I was just yelling at the screen like, why are we rooting for this man to be redeemed when he clearly just does not deserve it? And when Ben Stiller takes his kids away from him, I'm like, yeah, good on you, dude. You're doing the right thing. And so, I don't know. I'm clearly in the minority. I mean, one of our hosts has left the room, so I'll die on that hill. But man, Royal Tenenbaums, it was not fun. Not fun at all.
That is valid. Well, I mean, it's valid in the sense that it's your opinion. This is, to give the flip side, this is in my top 10 of all time. I love this film. This is a great movie, in my opinion. Gene Hackman, I think, is giving the best performance of his career in this movie, which is also a hot take. Hey, to be fair, Jacob, if Cody were here, he would be 100% on your side. He also hates that movie. I really like it. I think it has a lot to say. I get that it's not everybody's vibe, but I really like that it's kind of just all about these people who are all very broken and all very flawed, and how, kind of the biggest mistake was not appreciating each other while they were together. But now that they're together, it's not clicking because they're all kind of in a state of Arrested Development, which is funny because it's actually pretty similar to the show Arrested Development in a lot of ways. But I really like the dynamic of all these characters. But again, I get why it necessarily wouldn't work for everybody. Jack, have you seen this one?
No, I've seen like 3 Wes Anderson movies and none of them are this.
That is fair. Go ahead, Jake.
Yeah, this movie is incredible. I love Wes Anderson. This is one of the last ones pre-French Dispatch that I hadn't seen, that and Steve Zissou. And I remember seeing this at like a local cinema that was playing like Wes Anderson's films. So I was like, I'm going to go to this one. And I remember thinking it was incredible. I really liked it a lot. It's just that whole family dynamic is at the core of the movie, and sort of the dynamics between each family member and sort of their entire personality. I think Ben Stiller's really great. It's weird seeing him in a film so by an auteur like Anderson, but I think he's really good in the movie. Paltrow's incredible. Same with Schwartzman, Wilson, obviously. Yeah, Hackman is like the scene stealer. The fact that he just committed to this character for the movie, like you just wouldn't expect him to be in a film like this. But I would definitely nominate him for a supporting actress. Supporting actor. Or I guess it depends on, that could be category.
I put him in the lead personally that year.
Yeah, it's actually tougher than I thought. Yeah, you could totally put him in the
I think Golden Globe had him in the lead.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. But yeah, it's a really fun movie. It's definitely just what led to Anderson perfecting his style and his sort of storytelling, and it's great. And also Alec Baldwin, really good narration. There's a really good story about how he was just put in at the last moment, like, hey, could you just do this narration? We're probably not going to use it, but just be as quick as possible. And they used it. It's great.
It is like Wes Anderson's Succession. That sounds fun. Anyway, now
just to add one more thing before we move on, I think Rushmore's overrated too. So I'm just going to leave that here.
You're going to get killed.
Jacob, how do you feel about this? Is going to be important. We're not going to move on until I get an answer to this question. Jacob, how do you feel about 12 Angry Men?
I love that movie.
Okay, you're no longer on the hit list. Good. I needed to give him the chance to say something positive about a movie in order to.
Hey, I got weird opinions, but I'm not stupid.
That's fair. Okay, valid. You know what? Valid.
That's me as well.
Yeah, I've got out there opinions, and I will own my out there opinions. But 12 Angry Men is quality. It's an hour 45 of nothing but quality all around. So,
okay, you're back on the good side. Anyway, Jake, over to you. What is your least favorite movie log this week?
So everyone's doing sort of marathons or different sort of film challenges or reasons to watch through like a filmography of any sorts. I'm, because of the greatest podcast to ever exist, Blank Check, with Griffin and David. They just finished their Danny Boyle miniseries, who's one of my absolute favorite filmmakers. And of course, he has his most recent film, the film that I absolutely despise, is called Yesterday. If you just watch the trailer and then come away with an opinion of the movie that it's the best sort of most original premise that you could have seen in the last 20 years or so, I would 100%, I would fully understand and agree with that sort of opinion. But then you watch the movie and it does not live up to the potential, the ideas that it could explore. It does not want to focus on that. Instead, it wants to focus on the most generic romance between two very charismatic and likable actors ever. I'm really torn. I really wish this movie was better than it is. It has these great ideas that it could explore, but it focuses on stuff that is just not as interesting that you can find in other films. I just always wished. I remember seeing this in the cinemas with my mom, and I just remember thinking, like, this is the most mild mid movie. This is like a movie made for like a few generations older than me, and I just really hated that it doesn't take any risks or challenge itself with the premise. I think the most challenging thing, and I hope this isn't a massive spoiler, the movie's been out for a bit, but spoiler alert for Yesterday, I think the one risk that it takes that I thought was pretty good is the scene with John Lennon, which I really like in theory. I don't know if it's executed the best way, but it has really good ideas, and it just explores, since the Beatles don't exist, what would Lennon be up to now? But also, it's not just the Beatles, which I find a really cool idea. There's no Coca-Cola, there's no cigarettes, which seems like a massive thing considering the history of that. But also, Oasis doesn't exist, which is a hilarious joke. And then at the end, Harry Potter doesn't exist. Really cool ideas. I just wish it was fully explored, and it's instead replaced with a terrible love story. And Ed Sheeran is ass. And what is in this movie?
Yeah, no, I don't. I haven't seen this one since 2019, but I also remember not loving it. And for me, like, one of the biggest things is like we never really got like a reason or any explanation or any like even through line. Like I thought it was gonna come together. Like there's a reason why it's Coca-Cola and it's Beatles and it's this and it's that have all been effective. And there are even a few things that in my brain I'm like, I don't think this would be around if the Beatles weren't around. And like it just, when you're gonna do a premise that is this like heavy on the implications of other things, I think you kind of have to think that through. Like, I'm sorry, I don't think Coldplay is still around if the Beatles are not around. Like it just, it doesn't track. It's just kind of like a cute little premise, but honestly, you could do this exact same movie and have it not be the Beatles and just a guy who found all these great songs that were never released. And it would basically be the same movie. Like, you could do all the same dynamics you want to have with it, just the music wouldn't be as good. But yeah, it's fine. I really do like the John Lennon scene, though. That's like the one scene that I actually do. Well, maybe that's just because it's the one scene in the movie that's kind of interesting. But I don't know. Anyway, Jack, thoughts on Yesterday?
I haven't seen it since like 2019, 2020, and I generally really liked it when I saw it. And since then, my opinion has kind of almost. I don't want to say my opinion's gone down because I haven't rewatched it, but I'm scared to rewatch it because I feel like I'm not going to enjoy it as much. I do remember the John Lennon scene really well. That scene's fantastic. I think that Robert Carlyle, I believe, plays him, is great. Uncredited. But yeah, he's great. I love him in most things that he's in. But yeah, no, I kind of don't want to rewatch this just because I'm scared I'm not going to like it as much.
That is valid. Jacob, thoughts on Yesterday?
Saw it in theaters, and honestly, Caleb, I think we're on the same wavelength. I like this idea. I like Dev Patel in the movie. I thought he was very good.
Himesh Patel.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry, y'all.
No worries.
That's my bad. Lily James was good too. I liked their chemistry. I just kept being pulled out of the movie just by the idea of how this world even works. Like, if there's no Beatles, how are the Rolling Stones like even a thing? Like, do the Who exist? Like, is Coca-Cola like a monopoly, or is RC Cola like taking over? It's just, I had 1,000 questions, and clearly the movie had no interest in giving me any of those answers. So, good idea in theory, but I think in practice it was just like when you like go to the director, be like, what does this mean? The movie just basically goes to you, no, you shut up. So I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that concludes that portion of the show. Now we're going on over to the meat and potatoes, comic book movie performances. Jack, kick us off.
I mean, yeah, I have to pick the performance that you would all associate with me in comic book movies. It's Hugh Jackman and Logan, of course. As much as I have run this movie into the ground, I think it shining a light on Hugh Jackman's performance is warranted. This is one of my favorite performances he's ever given. I think he's incredible. Just the absolute pain that Logan is in, everything he's gone through. You can see it's taken its toll on him, and he's at his breaking point in this film. He's kind of just lost everything that's important to him, and Hugh Jackman just gives the performance of a lifetime in this movie. Wolverine was my favorite comic book character for like as long as I could remember, like both in comic books and in movies. And Jackman's performance is the center of it. I think he's incredible.
That is valid. Yeah, no, this is, I would say this is probably the best version of Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. Like, this is the best performance he gives throughout all the franchise, but he's just so good in the entire like franchise. Even in the bad ones, he's never the problem. But yeah, it definitely, you do see, and I think it helps that it was at least planned that this would be the last time he would play the character, because you can kind of tell that just the weight of every single performance before is weighing on him, and he's very, very good. Yeah, no, this is a good pick. Jake.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't particularly care much for Logan. It's a personal preference of mine. I just have never really connected with this movie, but I will admit I do like Hugh Jackman a lot. I think, especially since he has played this character for like 17 years at this point, or when this movie came out, it's it really just shows how much he has evolved and has learned with this character, and how we have sort of connected with the character over the years. And this is, the swan song for the character. And it's, I mean, he's really great, and I really like what he does. I'm okay with Jack picking this just because we all have our favorites that we love to talk about, and it's all right. But no, this is as far as like the performance goes, I think this is a good choice. I just think it's a little crazy going that he should have got a Best Actor nod. That's when I crossed the line.
I do agree with that. Jacob, thoughts on Hugh Jackman and Logan?
I mean, this movie in total is just fantastic. I mean, and it really just speaks to Hugh Jackman as an actor, because literally in 2017, this movie comes out in March, being Logan. Fast forward to November, The Greatest Showman comes out. And guess who stars in both of them? Hugh Jackman. So that really just speaks to his talent. Logan is just an incredible movie. Going into it with the Hurt, like Johnny Cash's Hurt, the trailer going into it, it spawned 1,000 imitators, like Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows teaser trailer styled to Logan, and The Dark Knight styled to Logan. I watched all of them; they were all fantastic. But yeah, Logan, I don't think any more needs to be said about it. It's just phenomenal.
That is completely valid. Well, we're going to go over to me for my first pick. And I'm going to go with more of a non-conventional pick. I am going with one of my favorite actors of all time in what is a very different type of comic book movie performance. I'm going Pauly G in American Splendor. This is a great performance. Paul Giamatti plays graphic novel and comic artist Harvey Pekar. And the film is based on the autobiographical comics that Harvey would make, but it has a very unique narrative structure where essentially you're seeing, Paul Giamatti play Harvey, but then you're also getting the real Harvey Pekar kind of commenting on various events and say, well, that's not quite right, and this and that. And Giamatti is just so good, and he gets so much of Pekar's dynamics done right. But this is a performance that I think could look bad if you're not looking at it from a certain lens, because so many of the mannerisms and the things don't make sense because Harvey Pekar as a man didn't quite make sense all the time. Sometimes he would talk with this very throaty voice, and then in the next conversation he wouldn't have that. And that's just who he was. And Giamatti just gets that down, and he just is able to imitate him so interestingly. And even then, beyond just the imitation, there's just so much bitterness and anger, but also humor throughout this. It's just a phenomenal performance. Jack, have you seen American Splendor?
No.
That is fair. Jake, have you, or what?
I said no, but I want to.
Fair enough. Jake, have you seen this?
No, but I also do want to.
Fair. I would have expected. Actually, I wouldn't have. Nobody has seen this one, but more people should. I highly recommend it. Anyway, Jacob, over to you. What is your first pick?
I'm honestly surprised this one didn't get taken first, so I'm going to take it while it's still on the table. Is it super basic? Yes, but it just seems like the smart option. Joker from The Dark Knight. I mean, yeah, super basic, sure. But I mean, am I hearing any arguments? I mean, it's one of the, if not the best. It is top tier. It is number one. I realized it when Joker scared the crap out of me when I saw it in 2008, and all these years later, nothing has even come close. So I mean, everything that has been, this character has been dissected, re-dissected, and re-dissected. So I don't think I can add any more to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I didn't pick this one just because I've talked about it to death, but I'm glad it's on the list because it absolutely deserves to be on the list. So yeah, obviously, great pick, phenomenal performance. I will say, I think maybe the best moment of his performance is the handheld cam moment where he's got the guy behind him and he's just talking to the camera. I think that is just the absolute like most terrifying moment of his entire performance. Jack, thoughts on Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight?
This is still a top 10 performance for me. Had I not gone with Hugh Jackman, I would have went with Heath Ledger. Absolute killer performance. Is one of my favorite Oscar wins ever. And just, yeah, there's very few moments in this movie where, like, I think of any moment with the Joker in this movie and I instantly get chills. That scene with the handheld camera terrified me when I first saw it, and just incredible performance.
Completely valid. Jake?
Yeah, this is the same case with Hugh Jackman and Logan, in the sense that I don't really care much for the movie, but I won't deny that the performance is great, especially a performance like this. I have obviously loved Heath Ledger. I think he should have won a few years before this movie, but I digress. He is really fantastic. The scene, I mean, I absolutely love the opening. I do think the opening's like incredible. Especially when I watched it for the first time, you just don't know it's him. And then when he shows up, it's just like absolutely fantastic. A great reveal. I mean, there's just really good stuff about the performance, and it's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, I understand it's been talked to death. It is a fantastic. It's one of the most talked about performances ever. The way it has infected pop culture. What are we, 15 years out? It really says to something like this how memorable something can be. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where like we've talked about it so much, but it is a good performance. I'm not going to deny that.
Completely valid. Well, Jake, it's over to you. What is your first pick?
So that Jake was saying that Heath Ledger is like the most predictable. You know, it's an obvious choice, and you know, it's talked about, you know, for a reason. I'm worried. Should I just talk about the one performance I think everyone expected me to do, or do I change it up? Do I not? It's really tough. I mean, I wanted to stick with the villains theme, so I'm just looking at the list of what I'm going to go for. Yeah, I'm going to stick with a villain, but I'm not going to talk about the one that everyone knows. I'm going to talk about. So I'm going to say Alfred Molina in Spider-Man 2. I have to go for that one. I love Dafoe and I love the Green Goblin, and he should have won the Oscar for that. But Molina is also just as good in his performance as Otto Octavius in Spider-Man 2. I think when I remember watching these films as a kid, I'm always enticed by the villains, especially these type of movies where they're given a lot more character and there's a lot more, they're more fledged out. And I was watching interviews with Molina about this movie a few months ago, and he was just talking about how he views the character as you know, the classic science gone wrong sort of situation, and how he sort of took approach to that, and how he talked with Raimi about the character. And it's one of those things where I've always loved Doc Ock as a character. I'm always torn between him and Goblin as my favorite Spider-Man villains, but he is just everything I want it to be, without it just going in the same track as Dafoe's performance. It is a completely different type of character, one that's even more tragic than Osborn, which I find really, really interesting. Yeah, it's everything that's great. I mean, as far as his performance goes, when he talks with the arms at the pier, it's really well done, and it's all on him at that point. But it's just great, and it's also just one of those things where it started at a love for this character actor, and seeing him come back for No Way Home was an absolute treat. But yeah, I'm going to go Molina for Spider-Man 2.
Completely valid. This is one of those performances I would nominate for an Oscar. I think he's just that good. And there's something very like talking to the arms. There's something almost very Shakespearean about the way he does that. And like a lot of different moments of this, he just adds such weight to this character, and it's such a good performance. And there is something so like you said, so tragic about this character, because Norman Osborn is someone who probably already has, you know, some moral failings and a bit of a screw loose before the actual Green Goblin stuff happens. This is just a normal good guy and who just ends up in a bad situation, and he plays both angles of it perfectly. But I think probably the best moments of his performance are actually in the before moments when he's talking to Peter. I think those, like just when he's at the dinner with Peter and Rosie, I think that is just so nice and so human. And then it contrasts with what we see later. Phenomenal pick, phenomenal performance. Jack, thoughts on Alfred Molina in Spider-Man 2?
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. A top-tier Marvel villain, top-tier comic book movie villain, and Molina gives a killer performance. I was so happy to see him show up in No Way Home again. That was a real treat, like you said. But yeah, no, great pick.
Jacob?
I mean, yeah, I mean, this is another performance that really doesn't need to be talked about because it's been talked about by a lot of people. But I've noticed in rewatching clips in the lead up to Across the Spider-Verse, I went back to rewatching some old footage from the Raimi films. And I notice as I get older, I recognize a bit of a running through line with all the villains in the Raimi films is that these people are doing bad things, but they're not necessarily the worst people. They're kind of thrust into the situations that they are involved in. They don't wake up like they rustle their hair, they brush their teeth, and like, you know what? I think I'm going to be evil today. Like, no, it just happens to them.
The only case of that is Venom, and Venom was terrible.
No, well, yeah, so yeah, sure,
It's nice to finally hear you admit it.
But yeah, it's inherently these people are not terrible human beings, but they're just they're basically pushed in that direction. So I think it's a detail that I missed when I first saw them as a kid, but now as I'm older, I pick up on it now.
Completely valid. Jack, we are back over to you. What is your second pick?
I'm torn between a few, but yeah, I think I'm gonna go with this one. So David Cronenberg has made at least one comic book movie, and Viggo Mortensen in that movie, A History of Violence, is absolutely incredible. Just this is a movie I had no expectations for when I saw it. I watched it for the first time for Fandom back in like 2021, and I was blown away. This performance is something else. He used to be this mobster. Is his name Richie, or was his brother's name Richie? I can't remember, but whatever. He used to be this mobster, and he left his life behind. He started a family, and things are finally catching back up with him after two armed men come into his work, and he kills both of them very easily. It's a great performance, very, very tortured performance from Mortensen, and yeah, he's got some great moments. That scene with him and William Hurt is fantastic. But yeah, no, I love this movie so much. It blew me away, and Mortensen is a big reason why.
No, Mortensen's good in this. William Hurt's also good in this. I'm in the minority, though, in that I think the best performance in this movie is Ed Harris. I think he's the one who takes it home for me, even though Hurt got the Oscar nomination. I think because he was William Hurt. But that is a very good. It's odd that that's like one of the few one-scene performances they give it to. But, I mean, it's a good scene. But, yeah, I think Harrison. But, yeah, Mortensen is good in this, and I do like this performance. So good pick. Jacob, thoughts on Viggo Mortensen in A History of Violence?
Never seen this one. I've been meaning to because I've heard nothing but good things. It's one of those that for a long time I thought it wasn't even a comic book movie. I just thought it was. I thought it was related. Like I had no idea it was even DC. It was kind of like Road to Perdition. Like I had no idea that was a comic book movie until I saw it for the first time about a year ago. So that gives me some impetus to finally watch it.
Valid. Jake, over to you.
Yeah, I have not seen History of Violence. It's one of my blind spots. Really should definitely get to this at some point.
Valid. Well, Jake, we are over to me, aren't we? Yes, that is right. We are over to me for my second pick, and I think I am going to go with another more out of the box pick, just because I can. And I am going. Actually, I'm still going out of the box. I'm gonna zig when I could zag, though. And I'm just going to go a super fun performance. This is not like a great dramatic performance, but this is just a performance that anytime he's on screen, he makes the movie for me and he makes me smile. I'm going with the villain of the film, the guy chewing the scenery, Timothy Dalton in The Rocketeer.
I like your stuff.
So much fun. He's essentially playing like Errol Flynn because, it was suspected at the time that Errol Flynn may have had some Nazi ties. And it's kind of playing on this idea of what if Errol Flynn was just straight up a Nazi spy? And I think that is like just such a cool idea for a villain. And Dalton is just lapping up all of the screen time. I think he is one of those guys who, if he hadn't played Bond, his career would have gone very differently. And he probably would have been like one of our great dramatic actors. It's just unfortunate that things went the way they were. I mean, not unfortunate, because you still get really great fun villain performances from him like this, and Hot Fuzz in particular. I think he is just absolute MVP of. But yeah, this is such a fun, unique take on a villain. I think Dalton is just so perfect for it. Jack, have you seen The Rocketeer?
I have not, but I've heard great things about it, and plus I'm pretty sure Jennifer Connelly's in it, so I will end up seeing it eventually.
Jennifer Connelly and Alan Arkin is also.
Yes. Okay, I'm
in his debut. In his debut.
In whose debut?
Or wait, no, I think I might.
Was Edward Scissorhands the year before that?
Well, because Alan Arkin was working in the '60s, so.
Yeah,
he was in The Russians Are Coming. The Russians Are Coming. Right?
Yeah, The Russians Are Coming, and Wait Until Dark, and a few other things.
Yeah, that was.
That's
sorry, y'all. That was
no worries. But anyway, Jacob, we'll stick with you. Have you seen this one?
Oh yeah, this is one of my all-time favorites. I love The Rocketeer. It is so much fun. I mean, depending on if anyone takes it, I might be coming back to this, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But yeah, this movie is just so much fun. I mean, it's directed by Joe Johnston, who would later go on to direct Captain America: The First Avenger, which is a very fun MCU film. And yes, Jumanji as well. So, legendary. Yeah, nothing but love for The Rocketeer.
Fair. Jake?
Yes, I've seen this. I can't remember specifically what year. It was a few years ago now, but it was definitely just a blind spot or one of those movies that I hadn't seen but was curious about. I think it's fun. I think it's just like, it's classic, that type of... it started... I guess Batman sort of did it, but the old vintage sort of comic book sort of characters from the 30s and 40s. Like, Batman's more popular than Rocketeer, but like I'm thinking like the Phantom or the Shadow, that really started that sort of pulpy sort of comic book noir stories. And I think Rocketeer is easily the best one. And I say this after not seeing the Phantom or the Shadow, but the Rocketeer just has a lot of just fun. And I think that's something that you forget is missed sometimes in movies, especially ones that are released today. It's just good stuff. Yeah, I really like it, and the effects have aged fairly well. Some of the effects, the compositioning, it isn't as good as it could be, but I'll take that just for 91. Not good stuff. It's fun. The Rock of Who. So
that is valid. So now we will go over to Jacob. Jacob, what's your second pick?
So my second choice, going to keep it in the vein of the pulp side of things, going back to 1998, directed by Martin Campbell. I'm choosing Alejandro Montega, played by Antonio Banderas in The Mask of Zorro. This movie is awesome, but really what one of the severely underrated parts is Antonio Banderas in the movie, because he's so good in the action scenes, but his arc throughout the movie doesn't get talked about quite nearly enough. He starts out as basically a thief with his brother, with Three Finger Jack and Nobody's Tough as Jack, like that whole song. But then this rogue like Union general like ambushes them and removes the head of his brother, and that makes for a scary sight later. And then basically the Zorro, played by Anthony Hopkins, takes the mantle and passes it on to Alejandro, and it takes a bit of time, but he gets fantastic at it. Just this movie as a whole is just so much fun. Sword fights are incredible. Horse chases are just incredible. I mean, Catherine Zeta-Jones being gorgeous. Anthony Hopkins pulling a great performance as the older Zorro, passing it down. And really, one of my favorite scenes in the movie, just for how twisted it is after we see the titular gold mine, how, I don't know if y'all have seen it. I don't know if you want me to talk about it or if I should save it, but
go ahead.
It's
all right. So the scene basically is the general and Alejandro, who's under the guise as this very rich Mexican aristocrat, and they're back at this base camp and they're having a drink together. And the general's like, "Did you know that the Campa Indians of central Peru used to cannibalize their victims' heads?" And he's going on this tangent, and then he's like, "Oh, where are my manners? Would you like something to drink?" And he pulls up this vat with Alejandro's brother's head in the vat, in water. And you just see like his eye all twisted like that. And Alejandro just looks at it and he's like, he's got to stay in character. But just inside, you're like, he just loses it. And is like, and the only thing that he can do, he has to smile in the face of his brother's killer. When he leaves, he gets so angry, he like snaps his cane in half. It's such a great scene. And so I can't recommend Mask of Zorro enough.
Completely valid. This is one where I'm not big on this movie personally. This is just one didn't work for me. Koho loves it, and I think at some point he's going to force me to rewatch it. But it's just not my vibe personally. That being said, Banderas is not the problem. He's great. So this is still a good pick because he's just feels built for this role. He's just so good at it. Just one of those roles that just seem like the casting just fits like a glove. So, Jack, have you seen The Mask of Zorro?
No, and I don't know if this is weird, but I didn't know that this was based on a comic book.
Oh, yeah, I
also just now.
It's one of the oldest comic book characters of all time. I think it's like the Mask of I can't remember the exact title, but it goes all the way back to like the early 20s when Zorro made his first appearance. And he's since lapsed into the public domain, so he's become very obscure. But really, Legend of Zorro is not discussed. Like, that movie's terrible, but Mask of Zorro is excellent. It's terrible, Legend of Zorro, but Mask of Zorro is awesome. And yes, I know, I saw Adelaide in the chat. Yes, notorious Mexican Anthony Hopkins. Yeah, that is highly questionable. I understand that, but I mean, it's Anthony Hopkins. Are you really going to question that? Really?
Jake, thoughts on Antonio Banderas and The Mask of Zorro?
So I like this movie. I was wondering, because I didn't know Koho was a fan. I was like, I wonder why. I wonder if it's written by Elliot Russo. And then I just checked to see who wrote the movie. And it was written by
it's Elliot Russo.
That makes a lot of sense now. I think Banderas is good. I mean, this is like why he got the role for Puss in Boots. Like, they based that character on Zorro, and it's like, well, might as well just get Banderas. He's perfect in that voice performance, and I think he's great in this. It's definitely not one I would go, oh yeah, this is the best, or one of the, let's look at the best comic book movie performances and talk about this one. But I mean, I think it's an interesting choice, and I like that. I get the thumbs up on that.
Fair enough. Well, now we go over we stick with you, Jake. What is your second pick?
So I'm going to go, I've been obsessed with this performance for almost over a year now. I think I should just go for it. Yeah, I mean, I'm also going to pick a villain role. I had that from the beginning. And it's just one of those things where we always sort of laugh at this sort of character, this performance, I should say. But I think it's absolutely fascinating, and I love it. I'm talking about Nick Nolte in the movie called Hulk. Yes, Jack. Yes, I am talking about his character, the father, aka David Banner. Yes, Nolte gives the performance of a lifetime in Hulk. I don't know if I can fully articulate why I love this performance, but there is just something so fascinating. Like, Nolte is, I think, a pretty good actor. He definitely takes weird choices every now and then, especially in performances that I think people like. But for this one, he is just so magnetic. I just cannot take my eyes off him every time he shows up in the film. There's a lot of subtext. Great relationship with his, not positively, but a very fascinating, interesting relationship with his son throughout the film. But the way he based the character was on King Lear, and I mentioned this to Payson, and he laughed at me for that, but it is true. He based it on King Lear, a man who felt betrayed by the world, and you really can see that in the performance when you know that going into it. During the making of the movie, he had a tank of oxygen, and he would just constantly inhale it. And Eric Bana had asked him, he said, why do you take the oxygen? And then he said, if people see you do this, they think you're crazy. And I just remember going, oh yeah, I can totally see Nolte just doing whatever the fuck he wants. And I really just love that. But I think the best part of his performance is at the very end when he talks to his son and basically, I didn't actually care about you. I just want your whole DNA so I can become more powerful and stronger. I'm just like, yeah, I get that. He just hates what the world has done to him, and now he has to resort to this as his final sort of moment. I think it's a really fantastic performance. He would win the Oscar this year for supporting actor. Call me crazy, but he deserves it. He's fantastic, and it's just a performance that I will constantly think about and go like, oh yeah, we need more performances like this in superhero movies now. Like, we don't get that. It's the most generic sort of one-dimensional villain roles. There's a lot more complexity to this character that I would love to see more of. And his Nolte-isms, I think, is great. Like, it's me, I'm your father, Bruce. It's me, Nick Nolte. I'm the new janitor. It's just, I love it. It's great, and I could talk about his performance to death, as I probably already have.
Look, Adam Sandler can tell me that he based his role on from Jack and Jill on Iago from Othello. That doesn't mean diddly squat if it doesn't actually make sense for the performance. I think Nick Nolte is just out of his mind in this movie. Like, yeah, I'll give you, it's probably the most entertaining performance in the movie because it's so silly. But like, I don't know. I don't see what you see in this performance, Jake. I'll put it that way. Jack, thoughts on Nick Nolte and Hulk playing King Lear, apparently.
I just want to go back maybe 30 minutes to the point where Jake told me, or Jake said, we all have that performance that we really like, and that's fair. So I'm not gonna shit on you for that. But then you added, but saying he deserved a Best Actor nomination is where I draw the line. I say nomination, you say win for supporting actor in 03.
Yeah, you guys jacked crap for Hugh Jackman.
But like,
but there was just so much fucking people going about that when the Oscars for that year.
This performance is good.
You think like entertaining. And Hulk saying he should win for you.
Oh yeah, because I'm insane.
Okay, fair.
In an otherwise boring as hell movie. It is a bit of a breath of fresh air for the movie, but that doesn't mean it's a great performance. But
Jacob, thoughts on Nick Nolte and Hulk?
In the words of Richard Karn from Home Improvement, I don't think so, Tim. I'm sorry. Like I said, not trying to crap on you unnecessarily, but I feel like that movie is still going on to this day. Like it just got into theaters and it never left. So
you say that, though, the box office of that movie could tell you otherwise.
Jacob, Jacob
sorry.
totally has redeemed himself for me in my book from the Royal Tenenbaums fiasco. So good job, Jacob. Anyway, we do have 2 more spots open. So who has another pick ready to go?
I do.
Okay, Jacob, go ahead.
So, and again, this is kind of one I'm honestly surprised hasn't been taken already. So I'm going to take it anyway. I'm going to take Robert Downey Jr. in the first Iron Man, for Iron Man 1, the one that started it all. And he's had his great moments in all of the MCU. There is no getting around that. Endgame with his final sacrifice, that is an all-timer. But I'm talking cumulative. Iron Man 1 is Robert Downey Jr.'s finest work as Iron Man. Just where he starts to where he's basically Elon Musk on steroids, to where he gets lost in the desert, to where he gets kidnapped by the terrorists and he has to rediscover like parts of himself that were closed off to him. And then he meets Jensen. They build the big Iron Man suit, Iron Man Mark 1. Then he flies out. He becomes an entirely new person, or almost entirely a new person, swears that his company will no longer make weapons, only to make basically the ultimate weapon in the Iron Man suit. I will entertain a notion that like the first Iron Man movie is not a perfect movie or even the best of the MCU. Obadiah Stane not exactly lighting the world on fire in the villain department. I will accept that. However, any flaws that this movie might have are wiped away because of how good Robert Downey Jr. is in the movie. And he has had great work before and since. We're talking like Chaplin, among other things. But this is the movie that really like announced him as like he's Iron Man. Like you say Iron Man to someone, be like, oh, Robert Downey Jr. And it started with this movie from 2008.
Yeah, this is just one of those another hand glove performances. Just feels just too perfect, just so good in every moment. Just he embodies the character completely. And yeah, this is, in my opinion, this is the correct movie if you're going to pick an RDJ Tony Stark performance. This is the one to go with. I would nominate him this year. I think he is that good. And yeah, just an electric, just completely like dominating, attention-grabbing performance. Jack, thoughts on RDJ in the first Iron Man?
Oh, he's incredible. Absolutely the correct choice for the character. When, like, all throughout the movie, he's giving a killer performance. When he finally says, I am Iron Man at the end, it's the biggest fuck yeah moment in this movie. It's so great. Love this movie to death. It's been a minute since I've seen it, but I will be watching it shortly.
Fair enough. Jake?
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching this in the cinema and not knowing too much about Downey Jr. Like, I knew, because the only movies I knew him from at the time was this, and then Tropic Thunder, which was going to get released, a few months later or whatever. But he is just like so charismatic. Like, it's crazy how he works so well for the character. I mean, I know a lot of that is from him in his past experiences, and also just his personality, but it really shines through the movie. And it's like the one thing I take away from the movie is his performance. I mean, it's the reason why he became like the highest, not highest grossing, but the highest paid actor for like 10 years, essentially. Really, yeah, he's great. I just wish the movie was better, but that's just a whole opinion I have. But no, I think what works about the movie is the performance, and I think that's enough for the movie to work so well. And I mean, that's why it did so well and jump started this 30+ film cinematic universe that we're still into today.
Yeah, completely correct. I agree completely. Okay, who has Jack? Did you have one more lined up?
Yeah, I do have one more. I'm gonna backtrack on that and go with a different one that I just thought of. So, we talked about one obscure DC movie tonight already. Let's talk about the other one in Road to Perdition, and I'm gonna go with Tom Hanks. That Paul Newman is great, but it's Tom Hanks's performance in this movie that really draws me in. ever since so after his wife and kid are murdered early in this movie, he takes his other son and goes on the run while also hoping to get revenge on Daniel Craig's character, who is the one who murdered them. And his performance in this movie is super strong. All the scenes he's got with his son, whose name escapes me at the moment, both actors.
So Michael Sullivan Jr.
Yeah, but specifically the actor. But yeah,
Tyler Hoechlin,
yeah. Some of the scenes that they've got together are really, really beautiful and touching. But it's he's not the one that says the line, but in the scene in the rain when the character, I don't want to spoil in case anyone hasn't seen the movie, but when the character says, "I'm glad it was you," and he doesn't say a word, it's a shot of his face and you see the gunfire, and it's just, you can tell how much this hurts him. I love this performance. I love that scene specifically. Also has one of the most satisfying revenge kills in all of cinema, in my opinion. Love this performance to death.
Yeah, great performance. Very different role for Tom Hanks. I think this was definitely one of the first times he played. I guess you can argue Saving Private Ryan. This is kind of a continuation of the direction he went there. But he is very good in this. But this is the first time he really played a dark character, because at least you can make some more arguments than Saving Private Ryan. But this is just very different character for him, and he kills it. He's great. Jacob, thoughts on Tom Hanks in Road to Perdition?
I mean, yeah, that's a really great choice, Jack. I mean, I think this movie is really, really good. Daniel Craig is an asshole in that movie. He is so evil. And keep in mind, this was like 4 years before he'd be in Casino Royale. So for a lot of people, this was, I'm sure this was their first taste of what Daniel Craig had to offer. And then it was off to the races from there. He'd be Bond. He'd be Joe Bang in Logan Lucky, which is a personal favorite of mine. He'd be Benoit Blanc. I mean, I could go on. But Road to Perdition is awesome. Directed by Sam Mendes. I mean, need I say more?
Fair enough. Jake, thoughts on Tom Hanks in Road to Perdition?
I don't know if this is the number one, but this is definitely one of the most complex characters that I think Tom Hanks has ever played. I mean, I'm not saying that as a negative on the rest of his filmography, especially before this movie. It's just, I was thinking about it like, he's playing such a morally ambiguous, but also just morally complex type of character that you just don't really see from America's Dad, Tom Hanks. So it's sort of interesting to see him play against type. And I think for the most part, he's pretty great. He's not my favorite performance of the movie. I love Paul Newman. He's incredible in this. But Hanks does a lot with very little dialogue. I mean, I really like this movie. It's one of my favorite movies, but I really like how they sort of communicate with it as very little dialogue as possible, especially the relationship between father and son. I'm a big fan of that. Also, the way he teaches them how to drive, or you have the scene in the cafe, also like the restaurant, the diner, I should say. And the ending, I think, is also really powerful. But I think it's a really good performance that I don't know, it's sort of been forgotten, especially in Hanks's incredible filmography, that more people should talk about this performance for sure.
Yeah. Well, that concludes it for that portion of the show. To recap, our picks were Hugh Jackman in Logan, Paul Giamatti, American Splendor, Heath Ledger in The Dark Knight, Alfred Molina in Spider-Man 2, Viggo Mortensen in History of Violence, Timothy Dalton for The Rocketeer, Antonio Banderas for The Mask of Zorro, Nick Nolte in Hulk, Robert Downey Jr. in Iron Man, and Tom Hanks in Road to Perdition. But before we go, we do have to break down the movie of the month. And since Jack's internet cut out, Jake, we're going to start with you. Thoughts on Last Action Hero?
So I hadn't seen this movie in many, many years, and I remember really liking it a lot as a kid. It was sort of like when you start to become a fan of film, you start to realize, oh yeah, films can play with the meta sort of narrative and sort of make fun at the idea of movies. And I think this is a really good one. I really like what Schwarzenegger is doing. I mean, he's essentially just parodying his action career, There's some really good bits. I didn't know this is co-written by, or the story was at least come up with Zach Penn of Avengers and Ready Player One and like some other stuff. But screenplay also co-written by Shane Black, which I think I completely forgot about. So he adds a lot of wit to this movie. I think it's really interesting, like just the idea of just playing with action tropes and cliches. I mean, I really love the villains. I mean, when I say villains, I mean Tom Noonan's The Ripper. I think he's really great. I mean, I've only seen Noonan in like a few other stuff. He's great in Manhunter and Synecdoche, but he's really good in this just like small sort of performance. But I mean, I like F. Murray Abraham as the quote-unquote villain of the movie until it turns out that it's actually the secondary antagonist, which is, oh my God, why am I blanking? What's his name? Oh
Charles
my God. Thank you. I completely forgot on Charles Dance. How dare I? I think Dance was really good in the movie. I love his gimmick with the eyeball and how that pays off at the end. But really good stuff. It also was my introduction to Ingmar Bergman's The Seventh Seal, which is sort of bizarre to think about Ian McKellen as Death. And some really good ideas. Like I like when he goes to the police station, you see Sharon Stone and Robert Patrick playing their respective characters from Basic Instinct and T2. And you have the whole Stallone gag, which is pretty funny. I think this is a really fun action movie that I both wish could have done a bit more with the ideas. But I mean, it does a lot, so I can't really criticize that much for it. But I do think it's a really, really fun film that I'm surprised got made in '93. Like, that's not a movie you would expect to be made, especially during like Schwarzenegger's like peak years.
Yeah. I have not seen this yet. So Jack, we're gonna go over to you. Oh, Jake, what do you give it out of 5?
I would give it 4 stars.
4 stars. Okay, Jack, over to you.
Yeah, this was a lot of fun. I was not expecting to love it. Just I had seen like a couple of clips out of context from this movie and made me roll my eyes pretty hard. But I actually watched it, sat down and watched it, and it's a lot of fun. Like, yeah, there's some really eye roll inducing moments, some really cheesy elements, but it works for this movie. The kid can be a little annoying, but other than that, I don't really have many big issues. I think, look, anytime Charles Dance is in a movie, that instantly increases my enjoyment by like 50%. Anytime Charles Dance shows up, I'm having a good time. The line that the kid says to Schwarzenegger, which I don't want to spoil for Boatman because he hasn't seen it yet, but when F. Murray Abraham shows up the first time, I
do know that line. I do know that line.
He killed Mozart.
Look how that guy killed Mozart. Like that line is so fun. There's some great moments in this. When they're at the house after Charles Dance and his goons tried to kill Schwarzenegger at his house, and they find the thing, the little thing that looks like his red eye, and it says vengeance, or I can't remember what it says, but they turn it and then they Schwarzenegger's like, no, don't touch, and then they cut to an outside shot, and then you just see this massive explosion, and then it cuts to them in the police station, both just covered in like soot. It's got some really funny jokes, really funny gags. Had a great time with it. Got about 15 minutes left, but yeah, it's probably going to end up being 4 stars for me.
Fair enough. Well, that concludes the show for tonight. Thank you, Jacob. Thank you, Jake. Thank you, Jack. Thank you to everyone at home for watching. This has been Multiplex Locked It, and we will see you later.
In case I don't see ya. Good afternoon, good evening, good night.